former President Trump, under former President Bush, the federal government has sent stimulus checks directly to families, no strings attached. These programs have a real impact, and the reports and the data that comes from these studies show that families who participate in these local government pilot programs spent the money on necessities. So we're talking food, utilities, and other basic needs, and they experience lower rates of unemployment, higher rates of housing and food security, and a higher sense of self-determination. The county's program, Uplift Harris, is a pilot program, and it's similar to each and every one of these programs. It would provide $500 per month to 1,900 families in high-poverty areas. Importantly, this is fully funded by federal dollars. One of the main questions that I've been getting from residents about this lawsuit is, why the heck does Ken Paxton care? This is not state money, this is federal money, and we're trying to help people. With his lawsuit, Attorney General Ken Paxton has decided that Harris County residents are unworthy of getting the direct help they need from their government. To achieve this goal, he misconstrues the Texas Constitution, attempting to find refuge in language that is so outdated that by its own terms it applies only to freemen in our state. Well, let me dispel the misinterpretations. A guaranteed basic income program is not an illegal gift of public funds. The many cases that have interpreted this constitutional provision make clear that this provision was designed to prevent cronyism, not programs that benefit the public. That's why our state has programs like TANF. That's why the Attorney General didn't utter a word about the guaranteed basic income pilot programs in areas like San Antonio, Austin, and El Paso County. And that's why this Attorney General himself has issued an opinion that local law enforcement officials can make donations directly to nonprofit organizations using public money. This program clearly benefits the public. Study after study after study has shown that when folks receive a guaranteed basic income, they use that money on necessities. That benefits our entire community, allows themselves to lift themselves up out of poverty, giving them more money to better participate in our economy. Second, nor does the county doing this as a randomized pilot program make the program illegal. Local governments have limited resources, and the law allows those local governments to decide how best to allocate those resources as long as they do so in a rational way. That's why if you're a Houstonian who's in need of public housing and you go apply to be on the Section 8 housing list, you're going to be on the list, and in many instances you will not come off that list. That's why there are scholarships that have public money that go directly to only a select few individuals. And that's why when I was in high school trying to decide which school to go to, the choice wasn't mine. I was put in a lottery system to go to one of 3 schools in the district because no one school could house every single kid that was in that district. Today, we're seeing an example of partisan politics dragging us to the courts. The Attorney General's office is currently attempting to schedule a hearing on this matter on whether the county's program should be blocked. My office will be representing the county in that proceeding and throughout the rest of the case. After that, my guess is this case is going to go to the Texas Supreme Court. This is the same court with the justice who in a recent speech praised a Republican state senator for, quote, fighting against Harris County officials. So let's just say that I am less than confident that the county is going to get a fair shake in the Texas Supreme Court. To the Harris County residents who are watching this today, I ask that you remember today. Remember that your county government was taking action to help lift up families with direct cash assistance. And remember that Republican politicians in Austin, the same politicians who have no problem helping out big business, no problem helping out their buddy CEOs, block those families and those communities from getting that help. The county has my commitment that my office is going to vigorously defend this program. We'll see what the courts say, but I just want to thank Commissioners Court for stepping in and doing the right thing to try to help families throughout our county. If it wasn't a problem when San Antonio did it, if it wasn't a problem when Austin did it, if it wasn't a problem when El Paso County did it, shouldn't be a problem when Harris County does it. Thank you.
I'm Rodney Ellis, and I do want to say how proud I am, Judge, that you would juggle your schedule to have this press conference, and how proud I am of our great county attorney. I did joke in the other room before we came in that I put on this blue tie with elephants on it because it seems like my former colleagues in the legislature spend a lot of time trying to put their hands around my neck. But I don't take it personal. You said it best, Christian. That's a target on Harris County. And the reason is because deep in the heart of red Texas, Harris County is the biggest Democratic stronghold, and it matters. Harris County is bigger than 25 states, and that matters, people. But let's be clear about what matters here on this issue. Uplift Harris is about helping struggling families make ends meet, put food on the table, and keep the lights on. We're talking about seniors who choose between meals and medication, workers who put in 40 hours or more a week and still don't have enough to make it out of poverty, parents who worry about whether they're going to make rent or keep the lights on, children who are growing up in poverty. It's about people living under the crushing weight of poverty and just striving for a moment to breathe and a chance to make their lives better. This is what Uplift Harris is about. It's about the people that we all serve. Don't let the state make it about anything else. I want to repeat that. Don't let the state make this about anything else. They need to be held accountable to the people they are failing every day with their policies of neglect and extremism. The lawsuit attacking Uplift Harris Guaranteed Income Program is an attack on the people of Harris County. It reads more like a MAGA manifesto than a legal document and reveals a state that has grown too far and too comfortable with using people as props in a cruel game of political gamemanship, political theater. This program was carefully vetted and fulfills a vital public purpose. The law is clear. That public purpose is getting people out of poverty. Guaranteed income is a proven way to create economic development opportunities for people and communities that our state often tries to ignore and put aside. It's one of the few things I can think of that Martin Luther King, Richard Nixon, and Dr. Milton Friedman agreed on. Might be the only thing that all three agreed on. The reality is that Austin extremists like Ken Paxton, Dan Patrick, and Senator Bentoncourt, who took a PPP loan, don't care about the law or serving Texas families. What they care about is maintaining a system that favors billionaires and starving working families of the support they need to thrive. Nearly 2/3 of American voters, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, support guaranteed income programs. Reasonable and compassionate people across the political spectrum understand that payments can be used to make necessary purchases and empower people experiencing poverty to transform their own lives with benefits that benefit them and benefit society at large. That's the power and the potential of programs like Uplift Harris, to give these people a chance to put their lives on a better track. At the local level, we refuse to be bystanders as soaring economic inequality has led to 750,000 members of our community in a position where they endure a relentless cycle of poverty. We can do better. We're going to fight it all the way. Christian Menifee, I will say this. I took a little bike ride around my law school. I didn't get into the good one you got into. But I took a ride around the University of Texas this morning, and I thought about when I read those great constitutional law cases, known as the civil rights cases, that were all anti-civil rights, how brilliant writers and legal minds use outright bigotry to justify what they were doing. I hope, and I know some members of the Texas Supreme Court, when it gets there, I hope they will rise above petty political partisanship. Some things matter more than whether or not you satisfy your political base. Thank you, and Judge Hidalgo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all so much. And thank you, County Attorney and your team. I know John Feldman's here with us for the work that you guys continue to do on this. And let me just mention why we're here. We passed Uplift Harris and we announced it almost a year ago. Almost a year ago is June of last year. And we did this because guaranteed income is one of the oldest and most successful anti-poverty programs out there. When my team first told me Milton Friedman and Richard Nixon and MLK, all were proponents of this program. I almost didn't believe them. When they told me that it has been shown to work not just in the US, but in other countries, I knew this was something we had to do. Roughly 1 in 6 Harris County residents live in poverty, which is a higher rate than other large counties in the state and in the nation. As people already know, it's possible in this county, right here in Harris County, to work full-time, to work multiple jobs, and to still not be able to pay for basic necessities. That's what this program seeks to address. We had more than 82,500 people apply for this program. The need is enormous. In other jurisdictions, recent data shows that programs like this one help increase employment rates, help strengthen families, help improve health outcomes, and improve mental health outcomes. More than 80 cities and counties around the nation, as well as other nations around the world, have been successful. And I know they like to call it some sort of a socialist experiment from left-leaning jurisdictions, but similar programs were passed in Arizona and other states that certainly can't be called liberal. If Ken Paxton succeeds in getting an injunction, as his lawsuit calls for, he and Texas far-right Republicans will be responsible for taking $500 a month away from the 1,928 low-income Harris County families who are expecting their first payment on April 24th and have been expecting that payment since March 18th. Today is April 10th. These families are counting on this support for basic necessities, to pay for groceries, to pay for utility bills. And Ken Paxton is playing political games with their lives. And I ask that Mr. Paxton come down and meet with some of these families and tell them straight to their face and see what it was that they were going to use those dollars for. And tell them that, never mind, it's not arriving anymore. We reject the premise that there's a legal conversation to be had here in the first place. But given that they're pretending like there's a legal conversation, let's look at the lawsuit. It's political speech, okay? It's not a legal document. They've branded it cheekily, the Harris handout. I guess they could have gone for Hidalgo handout because they're making it all about me. And if you turn the pages, you know, it's like a basic lawsuit, except that it's really short. It's 16 pages. So folks here who are familiar at all with lawsuits, it's 16 pages. This is jurisdiction and venue, background. Let me point you to the pages where he makes his argument. Double-spaced footnotes. Here's one page. Here is the second page. And then after that, it ends. The argument is explained in 2 pages, double-spaced, with footnotes, taking up a good chunk of the bottom of the page. And so, most of it's rhetoric, okay? I read it. It's a branding campaign. There's no argument. It says our program violates the Constitution because it violates the Constitution. It says programs must have a public purpose, and this program doesn't have a public purpose. Obviously, the public purpose is to reduce poverty. Somebody off the street could tell you that. It says the program arbitrarily selects recipients. If you go to the website, you could see in 1 minute that you weren't allowed to apply unless you met very specific qualifications on income and very specific qualifications on geographic location. Trump himself instituted and touted a program in 2020 that sent checks to individuals beneath a certain income level. He put his signature on the checks, I remember, because I received one. Republicans, far-right Republicans, only care about this program now because we're doing it right here in Harris County. Now, not in the lawsuit, but in Paxton's sensationalized press release, he says that certain classifications of non-citizens would be eligible for the program. It's trying to make it sound like this is some ploy to, under the radar, give this support to undocumented immigrants. This money can only go to U.S. citizens or people who have protected legal status. These are lawful permanent residents, people with green cards, people who've been granted asylum, political refugees, people who've been granted protection under immigration law, and so forth. I was in college when I had a green card myself. I didn't become a full U.S. citizen until 2013. And I can tell you, having a green card means being here legally. I don't know what political calculation they made or what happened that caused them to file this lawsuit this week, but it's really cruel, the timing of this, and I truly hope that the Texas Supreme Court sees that. We announced this program, as I said, in June. Senator Betancourt sent his letter to Ken Paxton challenging the program in January. Recipients were selected and were notified in mid-March. It's April 10th. The timeline is not new. It's been public for months, since last year. This is unscrupulous of Betancourt, of Paxton, of these far-right Republicans that are behind this attempt to play with people's lives. If Trump Republicans had a problem with this program, they needed to raise it before the families were selected and before the families were counting on these dollars. Honestly, that's what we were expecting. After Betancourt sent that letter, we figured something like this would come. When it didn't, and the date to tell the recipients they'd been awarded the support came and went, we figured that must be it. Harris County used to be a rubber stamp for whatever came out of the Texas legislature and whatever came out of these folks' ideas. When I took office, when we took office, we changed that, and they don't like that. We're doing better as a community. We've done incredible work, but they don't like that we do things in a way different from what they would do. Newsflash, it's democracy, guys. We were elected by the people of Harris County, and we are making these decisions with the confidence of the people of Harris County. This is not just cruel, is not just laughable, 2 pages double-spaced. It's dangerous for democracy. They do it all the time. They sued over election laws. They sued over our use of COVID masks. I'd forgotten this, the Chronicle reminded me. The Texas comptroller accused us of defunding the police, and then he rescinded the accusation. They enjoy it. The problem is the 5 million people who live in Harris County are their constituents also. I can handle being called falsely a socialist all day long, okay? But the families whose plans and livelihoods are being caught up in this are not deserving of this kind of behavior by their elected leaders. Texas leaders do this with impunity because they know the people they're hurting are not their billionaire donors, but everyday people with limited political power. These hardworking families of Harris County don't have access to the millionaires and billionaires Ken Paxton used to fund his criminal legal defense. They are just trying to get by. They're calling it the Harris handout. I think we ought to call out then the Paxton payments. How he used federal funds, how he used public funds to keep out of federal court. How he used Texans' dollars to object to 2020 election results in other states. Your dollars went to a lawsuit that was never going to work to object to election results as far as Pennsylvania. Or we could call it the Betancourt benefit. How he took public federal dollars in the form of PPP loans, if we're trying to play with words. This isn't just going to affect Harris County families. We've seen time and time again that what Texas does, other states follow, that they end up lowering the bar of what far-right Republicans in other states have to do, exacerbating the extremist lengths that far-right Republicans have to go to in order to make it through their primary. And so I've already heard from jurisdictions with successful programs that are fearful of what might come next with their guaranteed income programs because of what Texas is doing. So where do we go from here? We're fighting this. I have full trust in our county attorney and his office to fight this. As he said, more likely than not, the Texas Supreme Court elected judges will rule in favor of Paxton because they're scared to lose their primary, which counts on far-right Republican voters. But I hope, as my colleagues expressed, I hope that the court can see the very easy, basic reasons why this is not a serious lawsuit. And these points are truly laughable. So I think it's possible that they will stand up for the most basic and obvious interpretation of the law. Let me repeat in Spanish briefly, and then we'll take some questions. Como saben, hace casi un año, en junio del año pasado, anunciamos este programa Uplift Harris para ofrecer $500 mensuales durante 18 meses a ciertas familias en el condado Harris. El programa empezó el proceso de aplicaciones. El 22 de marzo se notificó a las familias que recibirían estos fondos. Estas familias llevan semanas planeando tener $500 más este mes. El 24 de abril, en un par de semanas, iban a recibir el primer pago. Pasamos este programa porque este tipo de programas de ingresos garantizados son uno de los programas más eficaces para reducir la pobreza. Tanto Martin Luther King como el gran economista conservador, el Dr. Milton Friedman, como el presidente republicano Richard Nixon han apoyado programas como estos. De hecho, hay programas exitosos muy similares a este, no solo en Estados Unidos, no solo en Texas, sino también a nivel internacional. En el condado Harris, 1 de cada 6 residentes vive bajo la línea de pobreza nacional. Esa es una estadística peor de lo que es en otros condados similares. Además, todos conocemos familias que todos trabajan, tienen de repente múltiples trabajos y aún así no pueden pagar por necesidades básicas. Más de 82,000 personas, familias, aplicaron a este programa y logramos seleccionar más de 1,900 familias. En otras jurisdicciones hay información, hay datos que demuestran que estos programas incrementan las tasas de empleo, fortalecen familias, mejoran la salud, inclusive la salud mental de los participantes. Si el abogado Ken Paxton logra destruir o recibe un mandato judicial para detener y destruir este programa, él será responsable por haberle quitado $500 al mes a 1,928 familias del condado Harris de bajos recursos. Familias que están planeando tener el primer pago de $500 el 24 de abril. Familias que estaban contando en esos fondos para pagar facturas básicas de servicio, supermercado, necesidades básicas. Invito a Ken Paxton a que visite a esas familias, algunas de las familias que han recibido, van a ser otorgadas los fondos y que él directamente les diga que ya no van a recibir esos fondos. Ahora, esta es una demanda legal. Nosotros vemos que realmente aquí no hay argumento legal, pero si queremos hablar de temas legales, podemos ver la demanda aquí. Es una demanda bien delgadita porque son solo 16 páginas. Entonces, como las demandas normales, aquí es la primera página. Luego, entonces, habla acerca de lo que ha pasado, que ha sucedido cuando inició el programa, dónde se está llenando la demanda. Y aquí, en esta página, entonces explica sus razones. ¿Por qué están demandando al condado Harris? Como ven, la página usa bastantes espacios, o sea, casi no caben palabras aquí. Página 1, y esta es la página 2, con argumentos. Y aquí acaban los argumentos, es el fin de los argumentos. Entonces, son 2 páginas, realmente menos de una, porque es con espacios. Aquí también tienen información. Realmente no hay argumento legal contra este programa. ¿Qué está diciendo Paxton? Está diciendo que el programa es ilegal porque no hay beneficio público. Bueno, obviamente el beneficio público es reducir la pobreza, lo cual estos programas en San Antonio, en Austin, en Arizona han logrado hacer. Luego dice que no, este programa es ilegal porque selecciona a los recipientes de una manera al azar. Bueno, para poder aplicar el programa tenían que tener un ingreso de menos del 200% del nivel de pobreza federal en los Estados Unidos. Entonces, no todo el mundo podía aplicar y hay muchísimos programas como este. Por ejemplo, el presidente Trump en el 2020 envió cheques con su firma, inclusive yo recibí uno, y era exactamente lo mismo para familias bajo cierto nivel de ingresos. Dentro de eso, pues no se le puede otorgar a todas las familias, entonces se hace la selección al azar, pero ya se ha reducido a cierta cantidad y así funcionan muchos programas públicos, incluyendo programas estatales. Entonces, un punto más, Paxton no escribió esto en la demanda, pero sí está en un comunicado de prensa que él envió. Dijo que hay varios no ciudadanos que podrían ser elegibles para el programa y me dio la impresión que estaba sugiriendo que estamos intentando ofrecer estos fondos a inmigrantes sin papeles. Como saben, esa batalla la perdí públicamente, entonces, pues los únicos que reciben estos fondos son ciudadanos y personas con estatus de residente, personas que tienen asilo, personas que son refugiadas u otras protecciones bajo la ley migratoria. Entonces, para clarificar eso, porque de repente ellos exageran. El condado Harris solía ser un sello de goma para el Estado, para los líderes estatales. En 2018, cuando esta comunidad me eligió al puesto de juez del condado, cuando mis colegas también llegaron al liderazgo del condado Harris, empezamos a cambiar las cosas. Ha sido un tiempo difícil, pero hemos logrado muchísimas cosas buenas. Y la verdad es que nosotros no hacemos las cosas como le gustaría a Ken Paxton, ni a Paul Bettencourt, ni al gobernador Abbott. Pero esa es la democracia. Esa es la democracia. Los ciudadanos del condado Harris votaron ya 2 veces para elegirme a mí, para elegirlos a ellos a estos puestos. Pero al Estado no le gusta, entonces la estrategia es a cada momento nos demandan. ¿Y qué hacen? Es lastimar a los ciudadanos, a los residentes de este condado Harris. El mismo abogado nos demandó cuando intentamos expandir la accesibilidad a las urnas de votación en 2020. Otro líder estatal me acusó de haber reducido el presupuesto de la policía, lo cual es 100% falso. Inclusive este señor Gon Hagar luego retiró la demanda, pues sabía que ahí no había nada. El gobernador Abbott nos demandó sobre las máscaras del COVID. Y bueno, hay muchísimas más en esa lista. ¿Por qué importa eso? Porque son las familias vulnerables las cuales están siendo atacadas en este momento. A mí me pueden llamar los nombres que ellos quieran, pero que no se metan con las familias del condado y menos estas familias trabajadoras de bajos recursos. Esos líderes en Texas, en la extrema derecha, hacen esto con impunidad porque saben que las personas que están lastimando no son sus amigos billonarios ni millonarios, pero son personas como común y corriente con poder político limitado. Estas familias del condado Harris no tienen acceso a los donantes millonarios y billonarios que Ken Paxton utilizó para financiar su defensa legal penal. Ellos simplemente están intentando sobrevivir. Entonces, quiero también expresar mi preocupación a qué podría seguir de aquí, porque es un ataque obviamente antidemocrático, que cada cosa que hagamos la demanden sin realmente ninguna razón de ser. Pero lo otro es que cuando la extrema derecha en Texas decide hacer algo, por ejemplo el tema del aborto, el tema de las pistolas en las escuelas, los otros estados, los otros líderes de extrema derecha tienen que hacer lo mismo, porque si no es una competencia. Entonces, la preocupación, y ya he recibido llamadas de colegas en otros estados con programas similares, es que otros estados intenten lo mismo, eliminar estos programas sin razón de ser. Pero bueno, vamos a seguir trabajando. la demanda la estamos respondiendo, el abogado del condado le está respondiendo, vamos a luchar. La Corte Suprema tiene todos los argumentos para hallarnos la razón a nosotros. Pero los jueces de la Corte Suprema igual son jueces elegidos, son jueces republicanos y pues ellos intentarán ganar su primaria. De repente decidan no ver la ley, sino ver la política, ojalá no. So we'll leave it there. Are there any questions?
Decir algo para Univisión en español. Dice la declaración de Ken Paxton que la Constitución de Texas prohíbe expresamente que cualquier condado, ciudad, pueblo u otra corporación o subdivisión política del Estado otorgue dinero público o caso o cosa a valor en ayuda de cualquier individuo. Estos fondos son unos fondos sobrantes, también dice, de unas ayudas que se proporcionaron en el año 2021. ¿Hay otros condados también del Estado que lo han hecho? ¿Por qué se ha atacado, por qué se ha combatido legalmente solo al condado Harris? Y las formas en las que lo han hecho el condado Harris, las formas en las que están proporcionando estas ayudas para las 1.900 personas, ¿se ajustaban a la ley?
Sí, obviamente todo esto se ajusta a la ley y la pregunta, ¿por qué atacan al condado Harris cuando San Antonio diseñó e implementó un programa casi que igual a este en el 2020, Austin en 2022? No hallaron ningún problema. Es político, es eso, y por eso me nombran a mí varias veces aquí, le han puesto un nombre como un poco cute, lo pusieron el Harris Handout, la demanda casi que no dice nada, porque para ellos es un momento de ser como muy luchadores por la causa de extrema derecha. El problema es que lastima a las familias. Si uno lee el estatuto de la Constitución, dice que los programas como estos no pueden utilizar fondos públicos para este tipo para programas. Bueno, lo que me han explicado los abogados es que han habido muchos casos utilizando ese estatuto, esa parte de la Constitución, y lo que los jueces han dicho ya muchas veces, ya está establecido, es que lo que quieren decir es que hay que utilizar esos fondos para un propósito público. De eso se trata, lo que es el public purpose. Entonces, aquí el propósito público es reducir la pobreza. Y eso es lo que dice en su demanda Ken Paxton. Dice, esto no tiene ningún propósito público. Pues sí que lo tiene, tanto así que Donald Trump hizo lo mismo en 2020. Entonces es por eso que espero que la Corte, que los jueces sean responsables, nos apoyen con esto, porque de verdad que la ley no podría ser más clara.
Judge Hidalgo, you mentioned that other cities like Austin and San Antonio have done this. Was it their counties that have done this? Can you explain how it's constitutional for a county to do it versus a city?
Yeah, let me leave this to the county attorney.
So as far as we can tell, the only county that's done it in the state of Texas is El Paso, but it's really an irrelevant distinction. The constitutional provision that the Attorney General is pointing to says that neither counties nor cities can do X, Y, Z, right? So it doesn't matter if the local governmental entity is a city or a county, the analysis is the exact same.
One of the things that Telemundo Houston here, one of the things that they mention also is the fact that they don't, the county does not have any control to see who gets this money and if they actually play the system. We asked that yesterday, but can the attorney say how can we answer the constituents that this money is going to the right hands? And I know the process and everything, but other people might say someone might just play the system. It's been cases before.
Yeah, so there's two, what I would say, controls that are in place to ensure that doesn't happen. One is there's a very clear set of qualifications that you have to fall into in order to be eligible for this, right? You have to be at a certain percent of the poverty line, and you have to be in a specific set of zip codes. All of those things are easily verifiable by the county. The second thing is each person who participates in the program has to sign a waiver basically saying that they're not going to violate the law with the funds that they receive from this program. But again, that level of controls is very similar to many other programs you've seen, right? When former President Donald Trump handed out checks to everybody during the COVID-19 stimulus package, you didn't see anybody from the federal government knocking on doors saying, hey, what exactly did you spend that money on? I think the issue is a red herring. It's just the state trying to divert everybody's attention away from the fact that, frankly, this is more about Harris County, the people who lead Harris County, and Senator Betancourt having an issue with us, than it is about the Constitution, the application of our laws, or good public policy.
And can you elaborate on that in español?
Sí, entonces la pregunta es por qué el abogado dice ahí en un pedacito que este programa es ilegal porque no hay seguimiento. ¿Cómo podemos asegurarnos que las familias que reciben estos fondos las van a utilizar de manera legal y responsable? Bueno, hemos creado una serie de parámetros para que solo ciertas familias puedan aplicar. Entonces tienen que tener ciertos ingresos, tienen que vivir en ciertas áreas y fuera de eso tienen que firmar ciertos documentos, lo cual hace que, vaya, ellos se han comprometido a obedecer los parámetros del programa. Pero como explicaba el abogado del condado, en ningún programa van a llegar a ver exactamente en qué lo gastó. Por ejemplo, cuando recibimos muchos de nosotros el cheque del expresidente Donald Trump en el 2020, no llegaron a tocar la puerta a los agentes federales a ver si realmente habíamos utilizado los cheques para necesidades básicas. Pero es por eso que se han hecho muchas evaluaciones en programas similares y se ha visto que por lo general los recipientes utilizan los fondos para necesidades básicas. Y como yo he dicho, todo programa va a haber algún problema, así sea pequeño. No todas las personas van a seguir todo al pie de la letra, sean programas para personas de bajos recursos o para personas millonarias. Siempre habrá el que lo hace, la persona que recibe el beneficio y no lo utiliza bien. Y eso es parte de la naturaleza humana y por eso termina la gente en la cárcel, son las noticias que el millonario estaba lavando dinero, que tal y cual, eso sucede. Entonces, y sí quiero también mencionar, I'll mention in English to that question about the cities and the counties, the actual, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. County Attorney, but the actual sort of clause that you're talking about, it just talks about like cities and counties cannot spend the funds in this way. But the way that it's been interpreted by the courts over time, it says, okay, what this statute really says is that the funds need to go for a public purpose. And so that's why all over our remarks is the point that, well, the public purpose is reducing poverty. And so he mentions it in his 2 pages of legal arguments that this program doesn't meet the public purpose, but of course it does.
Judge, I wanted to ask you, like, why do you think, I'm sorry, you noted how in the past the state has sued the county over multiple reasons, but in this lawsuit specifically, they mention your name and target you. Why do you think that is?
You know, it is puzzling to me. It is puzzling to me. I think they've all very much fallen in line behind Ken Paxton with the impeachment, with how much Trump supports him. Of course, Paxton has a debt to pay, so to speak, to Senator Betancourt, who was very much leading the charge against the Paxton impeachment. And so, you know, Senator Betancourt was really the first one to mention, this is Lena Hidalgo, this is Harris County. So I think they decided this is gonna be their new requirement, that they have to attack this program, and so they all have to fall in line and do it. It's odd what they choose, you know, it really is. And I will say, when they were arguing that we were defunding the police, it was an election year. This year, I'm not even on the ballot. So that's what really breaks my heart is why, you know, why are you guys doing this? Why are you doing it this year? Why are you doing it after families have already been notified? So the short answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. It's really, it's ridiculous and it's goofy, but it's real for these families. For me, it's no skin off my back.
Can I take a step
Yeah.
of it? They do polling. This has nothing to do with personality. It's all politics. This county is so big. I think in my lifetime, Texas will go blue. Quote me on that. And I'm 70 years old. And they know, not just in terms of the grand old party in Texas. At some point, who is president of the United States will be decided by a big state like Texas. New York, California, predictably Democratic. This state will go before Florida. And they fear you. Believe it or not, they didn't want you to win. Or they didn't want Democrats to take over this county. 8 years ago, you had 1 Democrat in this county. Now you have on the governing board of this county, 4. You got a real Democrat who's county attorney. That matters to them.
question,
sorry.
have the families been notified, and will they still receive their payments on April 24th? What does this mean for them, especially after going through that enrollment process?
Do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So the families have been notified. You know, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that this issue gets up before the Texas Supreme Court before that trigger date when the money's going to have to go out. You know, we want to be responsible stewards of public dollars, but until the courts weigh in, you know, we're going to continue to proceed as planned. I expect that the Texas Supreme Court will weigh in on this. This is a big political issue. You see all the news cameras here, and I know that John Devine is watching that. So I suspect that the Texas Supreme Court will weigh in.
In 2 weeks, if you can't give the people the money, what are you going to tell them? How do you go about explaining it to the people who are expecting the money?
Well, let's hope we don't end up there. Let's hope we don't end up there. But I think, you know, that's why it matters. Elections matter, and it is heartbreaking. Right now, we're focused on trying to get this through the courts as quickly as we can, so that the families hear before that date. And right now, part of the reason we wanted to have this press conference is for the families to know that there may be issue with those payments, and if we find ourselves in that position, it's not like we have another source of funds we can offer them, but we will cross that bridge when we get there.
I want to stress, we feel that pain. I mean, these are people who don't always read emails. They don't always check text messages. These are the poorest of the poor. We know there's 750,000 people who meet these guidelines in Harris County. So that's part of why, as the judge said, we're having this press conference. We don't know. But the best thing that they can do, regardless of what happens when they thought they were going to get a check, if they don't get it, is make sure they register and vote. There are consequences to elections.
Maybe more of a question for the county attorney, but you've touched on it specifically, or you've touched on it some about kind of like what the next steps are, but can you talk a little bit more specifically about what that is and what that timeline, like, are you hoping, it sounds like that there will maybe be a court date scheduled before the April 24th date when it was supposed to roll out? Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, to my knowledge, the case has been assigned to Judge Ursula Hall. The next step in the process will be the setting of a temporary injunction hearing. This hearing is to decide what happens during the pendency of the case. But if what we expect to happen happens, when this goes before the Texas Supreme Court, it'll be after that hearing. And whatever they decide at that time is really going to be, it's going to tell us what they believe, right? So our hope is that, you know, temporary injunction hearing will get set before Judge Hall, that the parties will be able to go in and make their arguments. And once the judge rules, then, you know, whoever lost in the trial court will take it up to the Texas Supreme Court. But again, I can't stress enough to you, the Texas Supreme Court watches the news. Like, they are aware that this is going on. When filings are made in their court on a high-profile issue like this, I suspect that they're going to want to weigh in on this issue as to the legality of Harris County's program.
And Attorney Menifee, just to follow up on that, you kind of noted Paxton's argument is small. Can you like summarize what exactly his argument is?
Oh, his argument is that, you know, his buddy Donald Trump should be able to give checks to people, but Harris County government shouldn't be able to. So, you know, he quotes a couple of provisions in the Texas Constitution and says that there is no public purpose to doing a program like a guaranteed basic income program. And we've seen some so-called experts go in the media and say, well, you can't give away public funds, you can never do that. This is not true. There are many instances where governments provide benefits directly to people, and in many instances, direct cash assistance to people. But the idea that there's no public benefit to guaranteed basic income programs is just belied by decades worth of data on it. And even some of the studies that have been done, like the pilot programs that have been done since the coronavirus, right? Because you had local governments throughout the country that were doing these exact same type of pilot programs using the exact same federal funding sources. And what they show is that people spend the money on necessities, frees them up to participate in the economy. It is good for all of us when our neighbor lifts themselves out of poverty. So, you know, what Ken Paxton is arguing is that he doesn't believe any of that because Harris County is trying to do this program.
So, depending on how the Texas Supreme Court ruling, would that come into question of other counties that are doing similar programs?
I don't know, but my guess is that Ken Paxton isn't going to sue other counties because he doesn't get to mention Lena Hidalgo and the Progressive Democratic Socialists when he does that. So that'd be a question for Ken Paxton.
Have you guys heard any heartbreaking stories from people who are worried about not being able to get this money?
Well, that's what I want him to witness, and I need to check with my department on what information we can and can't provide, but we would be happy to have him and introduce him to some of the families.
En español rapidito, ¿está preparada para decir, qué le podría decir, qué piensa decirle a las familias si no llega ese pago el 24 de abril?
Bueno, primero que siento mucho la decepción, la tristeza. Realmente es cruel esto y también el momento en el cual se anunció. Pero fundamentalmente hay resultados